poor. And I think I like our Constitution, and I picked, for example, Chapter 2, which talks to the Republic. The national values and principles of governance include human dignity, equity, social justice, inclusiveness, equality, human rights, and discrimination and protection of the marginalized. And then when I look at media diversity and plurality, and looking at what Wilson and the professor have said, what are we looking at? We are looking at the society, for me, and seeing that the media is the mirror of society. And what do we see that the media is portraying? I want to say that there's a lot of exclusion, there's a lot of discrimination, but worst of all, there's a lot of discrimination based on gender. Gender discrimination is the systemic and favorable treatment of individuals on the basis of their gender, which denies them the rights, opportunities, and resources. Information is a resource. Being picked as a source of news is an opportunity. Access to information is a right. And when we look at our media, where are the women in all this? And the poor, for that matter, and other marginalized communities and the minorities. Women's lack of representation and voice in decision-making bodies shows how discrimination is perpetuated in terms of access to public service. The media, whether privately owned or otherwise, is a public service. Article 27(3) of the Constitution of Kenya, the Bill of Rights. Women and men have the right to equal treatment, including the right to equal opportunities in political, economic, cultural, and social spheres. Social could even mean how were people brought into this meeting, for example. Where are the women who work in media here? Yesterday, the queue for the men was like double or 5 times that of the women. And I thought, gosh, since I joined the media so many years, the situation is still the same. I don't know whether Media Council just did deliberate discrimination of women not to be part of this, but we can even see in terms of the people seated here. But as a media, we have a role to play in terms of ensuring that inclusiveness is there. Our constitutions, and that is across the continent, would be useless if we don't have attitude change. These constitutions are made, but they must come with attitude change when they are being implemented. We can only nurture and foster democracy, citizen participation and development in Africa through promoting and strengthening institutions, accountability, and equal participation. For me, men sources and how do we treat our female sources? Most probably, if you are a broadcast journalist and you throw your microphone in front of a woman, she will not answer you immediately. She will want to think about the answer she's going to give you. That makes her different from the man, who will most probably give you his answer instantly. And as journalists, we must understand how we are going to treat our sources before we approach them. If we don't understand that, then we will continue perpetuating exclusion. Transformative change, looking at the topic that we have, the theme, media freedom for a better future. A better future calls for transformative change. We cannot expect other people to change if, as in the newsroom, we have decided to do things the same. We must change the way we do our business. It can no longer be business as usual. Even when we play the role of informing and educating, it is our duty to do it positively. an open and free media landscape with divergent opinion. Divergent does not mean you go and look for 5 men. Divergent means you balance. You have maybe 2 men and 3 women, and tomorrow you have 3 men and 2 women. That is what it means. Divergent does not mean we have the same faces that we see every day, so such that even before they speak, we know what they are going to tell us. In Kenya, we have like 52 tribes. But I can tell you, the voices or the people we see are from communities that are counted within one hand. We don't think about the others, that they could also have an opinion about an issue. The post-2015 development agenda, of which I'm passionate about, cannot succeed if we do not have gender equality and gender equity. Sustainable development, which is the main thing, the crux within the post-2015 development agenda, cannot succeed without gender equality and gender equity. But then, gender equality and gender equity cannot be achieved if there is no political will, opinions. Citizen participation in development matters also cannot succeed if there is no political will. There must be that space where the citizenry participate. The Constitution of calls for citizen participation of budget making, but how much are the citizens included? Soon we'll be read in June. Have the citizens been included? And these citizens must be men and women of this country. When I look at how things are right now, and I remember the professor who spoke yesterday in the morning, he really kept on touching on the MDGs. And the MDGs are key for us, even as the media. They are coming to an end next year, 2015. And there's a goal within the MDGs, Goal 3, which speaks of promoting gender equality and women's empowerment. Today, if you look at the world over, women are assuming power, and a lot of it, and particularly power within parliaments. But they are getting this through what we call quotas, or affirmative action. Affirmative action is actually an action that has been brought to address or to try to bring about equality and discourage discrimination. It was started in 1961 by President John F. Kennedy when he gave an executive order, when he realized that minorities in the US were being left behind the development process, and he wanted to bring them at par with everybody else. We have picked it all over the world, not only in politics, even in schools. For example, the university admits girls at 1 point less, just to increase the number of girls who are attending university. And we know that our socialization process, through our socialization process, women and girls have faced a lot of challenges. But it is affirmative action that is helping bring about this equality. So when an MP calls for women county representatives to be removed because they are not, he thinks they are not doing anything. And this is something that has been brought about by our laws. We, as the media, we just report the same. We don't even try to tell him that, do you know this, we are trying to empower our women? Do you know that there's been a lot of discrimination? We don't even question what the law says and give a critical analysis of things. As journalists, we need to give gender sensitivity to stories and analyze them, giving a voice to both men and women. And I remember Joe Ageyo reported last week from Accra, Ghana. I don't know, those of you who are able to watch him, when he said that in the gridlock of Africa, if inequality is the gridlock of Africa, how can we unlock it when there is a lot of discrimination? The media must play a role in this, in unlocking that gridlock. And looking at the post-2015 development agenda, media strategies should be derived to ensure women move away from the periphery into the center of development. Women should be allowed through the media the opportunity to exercise personal knowledge and weigh in on the democratic discourse that is often the reserve of experts, and I'm putting experts in quotes, because these experts, you will read that they are only men. A renewed media should positively influence Africa's perception on women for us to realize the development that we so much desire. That media must be able to change attitudes and perceptions. The media should be able to create an environment of hope and belief in a shared vision, not only for Kenya, but for the entire continent. The media, therefore, as agents of change, must realize the vital role women as agents of development, must realize the vital role of women as agents of development, and recognize that gender equality and empowerment of women must be achieved for us to realize the unfinished business of MDGs and to accelerate sustainable development beyond 2015. Thank you.
Thank you, Jane, for your presentation and bring out the issues of women as marginalized people in the media. I am also sure that there are men who are marginalized, basically. So I wish there was someone to speak about that in the other side of the leeward side. But having said that, we need to open the floor. I'll take 5 questions because we're running short of time. And then maybe 2 rounds. We have Bwana Nyanoti there. We have Chris. 2, 3, no lady? 4, right, 4. Another lady? Another lady? 5. Godia, you can see there are many women here. Right. Who has the mic?
Yeah.
Oh, you have the mic. All right.
Nyanoti. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
I think so.
Thank you. My name is Joseph Nyanoti, IT journalist at USIU. I want to pose a question or a suggestion about the media pluralism and diversity. Wilson tried to suggest that this could be a third topic. I think also the topic is tired, but we can stretch it further. Now, in Kenya, there are 2 heroes, a hero and a heroine. One is called David Rudisha, another one is called Lupita Nyong'o. There are interesting things the media missed about these 2 heroes. When there was a cartoon in the Daily Nation one time, when Rudisha won the gold medal, that when he comes to Kenya, everybody wants his millions, including the ladies of the night. Now, Lupita Nyong'o, who has been declared the most beautiful girl in the world, and Kenyans never saw that, is now, even there are local news magazines in the streets that has her picture on the cover. She has not been here for a photo shoot. What does this mean? Everybody is fighting for Lupita's dollars and Rudisha's, I think, pounds. Now, when we come to media plurality, diversity, plurality, many voices, in Kenya we have got very many media outlets, mainstream and otherwise. Our newspapers got several sisters and brothers of newspapers. We have radios, we have got community media, and of course social media. But to me, we have got diverse media outlets looking for diverse audiences for the same system. In other words, really, we are not having many outlets. we are routinizing the audiences so that if your money doesn't go to the Daily Nation, the Standard, the People, the Star, it will go either to the radios, even to the social media. What does that mean? Our media, somebody here said, I think Dr. Nyabuga said yesterday, that the media are trying to collect us together to say to advertisers. He even alluded to the fact that actually as audiences, we are media workers. When we sit down to watch soap operas, we are working for those people. In other words, we are being put together to go into the advertising world. So to me, let's not be mourners all the time, that the space is shrinking, there is no democracy, the state is stifling democratic space. An ordinary journalist here, and I'm thanking the Media Council that we have had opportunities for practicing journalists who were described as really people yesterday, and the academia people who were described as the theorists. But it is a good thing that we are having a debate here to see an ordinary journalist in every newsroom.
Please just summarize, please.
Summarize.
Please, yes.
They will tell you that a journalist, when he's working in the newsroom, is always mourning about these people have underpaid us, these people pay us less than hawkers. Now, isn't it high time we empowered audiences? In fact, the president started by saying media literacy. Somebody said citizen journalism, citizen tyranny. Now, I want us, we continue to interrogate what is this media literacy? Is he telling them what is news? Or how do the media lie to you? Thank you.
All right, please take 1 minute and be very clear, precise, and concise. Please. Mother.
Thank you so much. My first question is to Professor Chibita, who must have very well interrogated the topic of pluralism and diversity. In Kenya today, we have a mushrooming of these vernacular media, vernacular radio stations, and now TVs and so forth. And I wanted to ask her, what are the likely consequences of this development? Are they likely, for example, to help us achieve or promote MDGs? Is this an important aspect of media freedom? And also, whether it is likely to decolonize or isolate people from one another. I also have a question to Jane Godia. She talked about the difference between men and women. For example, as sources whereby a woman will think first and a man will immediately respond. One of the values of journalism is promptness. And maybe if a woman is going to take a week to answer a question, the journalist may have moved on. So I was wondering, are you proposing that it is the media to change, or should it be the women to change? Thank you.
There's a lady the other side, please. And say your name.
Thank you very much. My name is Helen. I was not going to let Jane down. I know I spoke earlier. I just have 2 questions. One is to Professor. What is your take on the narrative around digital migration? Because the narrative that has been weaved all along until this week, when we did have, as the Association of Media Women in Kenya, we had a conference on digital migration for marginalized communities. We actually brought women from Northeastern to come and join these global debates. The narrative that we have in the public is that, and I think there's the narrative which is silenced, so that communities and marginalized groups like women and marginalized areas where ICT uptake is very low, we are made to feel that we are going to lose out in this whole process, when in essence, we are going to have more frequency, more spectrum, and therefore, people will have more access to the media. I'd like to get your take on that based on Kenya and the East Africa region. For Jane, how do we engage the media in citizen participation? This month, there's been a lot of discussions around county budgets and debates. How can the media give us that information? Like, what is the budget for Nairobi? What are the priorities for Nairobi? So that as a citizen, I'm able to engage with it. Because I think if the media does not have this information, then they can't give us, there's no content and depth in terms of the discussions that we see, especially on TV. Thank you.
Thank you. John Gashie, please summarize your question, please.
Yeah, my name is John Gashie. I was just wondering, one, we are discussing about information as though it is free. We are discussing about communication as though it's air. Communication is expensive. And I think the issue we should be raising, can it be left to the commercial interest, or does the state have a role in facilitating that information? It's not air that all of us can breathe at the same time. Until we address that issue, then all the debates we are having here, in my view, are sideshows. Information is a commodity, is expensive. Who pays for that? Thank you.
Thank you, Gashie. The last one there.
Humanity is celebrated. Some communication ethic experts fault the photojournalist for having taken a voyeuristic view of his subjects, some of the weakest children as they died, yet he could have given them some water or biscuits. So what do we make of this as we begin thinking about the bigger Africa? One, that our democracy is in recession, even though we've held many elections in successive periods. Has the media been able to understand that a fallacy of elections to be equals to democracy leads to a process of disenhancing democracy as opposed to enhancing it? All media houses that I know put extra resources in coverage of elections. And after that, they wait for the next elections. But even where they've put as much resources, the coverage is wanting. So have they had a role in consolidating democracy? Perhaps not. Perhaps yes, depending on the country you are speaking about. So what I want to quickly show, and in answering Aruna and others, is to begin by indicating the 54 African countries to date, only 17 have guarantees on the right to information in their constitutions. Only 17. But only 13, and not 10, have access to information laws. And I would want perhaps to quickly indicate those countries so that we get it right. And these are Angola, Cote d'Ivoire, Ethiopia, Guinea, Conakry, Liberia, Niger, Nigeria, Rwanda, Sierra Leone, South Africa, Tunisia, Uganda, and Zimbabwe. That tells you that access to information legislative landscape in Africa is sparse, even though the rhetoric that we want to be open leads the discussion every day. Also, all the African countries have signed on the African Charter, whose Article 9 clearly spells out the need to guarantee the three rights: freedom of expression, media freedom, and right to information. What we need to ask is that even after doing that, the African Union has 6 binding instruments which require that states pass comprehensive freedom of expression and access to information laws. So what has become of the 40 countries without such laws? Somebody might ask, why is his mathematics wrong? He talks about 13 and then he says 40. There is one country called South Sudan which passed 3 laws in June last year, but the wrong versions of the past bills were taken to the president. So the president discovered after 2 or 3 months that he had the wrong version and didn't sign. But immediately after he had written to their parliament, they got into a crisis. That's the 14th country. They had a law passed by parliament, not signed by the president, so we do not know what will become of it. If you're a mathematician, then you get 54. However, what is the challenge here is that even for few countries like Uganda, and I know Haruna is very patriotic, and Mwalimu Nkusi, who have passed access to information laws, efforts to get information from the public have been marred by bureaucratic inertia and resistance, or lack of clear processes for handling requests, and less than ideal record-keeping practices. So regrettably, some of the laws are being used to clamp down on free flow of information instead of creating a conducive environment. And you can talk about the Access to Information Proclamation in Ethiopia and IPA in Zimbabwe, and the Access to Information Law in Angola. The 3 laws have been used to incarcerate more journalists than to give them information. So in terms of media diversity and pluralism, I think Professor Chibita has ably covered that, so I would want to move on. But I would want to point out that there is still one country called Eritrea, which is the only country in Africa that has no private media. So it only has state broadcasters still dominating. But in all other countries where liberalization has happened, I think there is a growing tension between commercially private media that tends to toe the line to the political elite. So it might be privately owned, but it subscribes to the principles of those who are in power. So there are quasi-state broadcasters emerging in the name of private players. So how far have we gone? Perhaps when you look at the issue of social media, it's only estimated that 63%, or in every 100 inhabitants in Africa, we have 63 with mobile phones. And 16% of people in Africa have access to internet, compared to 75% in Europe and 61% in the Americas. So this translates to a merely 7% of households in Africa having internet access, compared to Europe. Yet, we've been told by our leaders, it cost us so much to bring those cables to Mombasa, to Dakar, to Durban, to Cape Town, and that life will be different. What do we need to do? Democracy is in recession. Democracy has been equated to the fallacy of electionism. So because we elect people after every 5 years or 7 years, what they do between elections has nothing to respect freedom of expression, media freedom, and right to information, but they claim legitimacy to violate them. So there is a rollback. But are there opportunities? And I think Professor Tawana had talked about this. To me, there are many Wanyonyis and Kabwela Chansas fretting out for land title deeds, company accounts, public records, and now open data sets created by government in order to hold governments, public officials, and private bodies accountable. Haruna talked about an existing model law on access to information. When we began this process, the argument of most governments was, do not bring us the American law or the Swedish law. We want something developed in Africa. The model law was developed by Africans for Africa and launched in an effort for looking for African solutions to African problems. We've not had any one government saying, we now have a tool to move the process forward. Recently in Tanzania, they said they now have the tool to begin the process afresh after they've been doing the work on access to information. Conditions have been identified if the good goal of having good governance and effective institutions are to be ensured. One, ensure that people enjoy freedom of speech, association, peaceful protest, and access to independent, credible media and information. And two, guarantee the people's right to information and access to government data. This is an opportunity for media in Africa. This is an opportunity for consolidating democracy? Is Africa going to wake up and set the development agenda? Or is our rhetoric about development equivalent to economic growth that is not sustainable? Journalists can begin to shape that discussion, shape it well. The regulatory framework in most countries has improved, and that's an opportunity we talk about. I think about Rwanda, which had only a dominant state media or info, but they've done a lot of unbundling and reorganization of the sector. There is an opportunity of growth there, and the digital switchover offers an opportunity for content generation. But to the lady who asked, would there be equivalent dividends? The regulatory framework will determine. It's not automatic. The Open Government Partnership launched in 2011 offers another opportunity for Africans on this issue. But so far, there are only 7 African countries: Kenya, Tanzania, Liberia, Ghana, and Sierra Leone and Malawi. What does that tell you? That we are good at the rhetoric of openness. But if we begin to seize these opportunities as journalists and ask questions, why has Kenya not developed its second action plan on OGP? Why is it that Uhuru and his team were going to London for the marathon, but he forgot to go for the OGP summit? The peer review mechanism, which is, another African solution to African problems, started nearly 11 years ago, only acceded to by 34 member states, but only 17 have been reviewed in the last 11 years. But those who've been reviewed, most of them have not even shared with their citizens what was the review that heads of state gave to each other. Kenya was reviewed, and Kibaki was told, think about your electoral body, because appointing your commissioners by yourself is going to be a challenge. He did not heed. 2007, 2008 violence happened. We then began taking the correction. Should we be waiting for the democracy to be reversed so that we can make another ambitious step forward before we take 3 leaps backwards? Limitations of the regulatory framework is still a challenge. I only want to reiterate that there is continued retention of colonial and antiquated archaic versions of insult, defamation, and sedition laws in Africa. Who do these laws serve if to protect the foreign princes and queens and kings? Are these the kings and queens?
To try to get their secrets about the operations, the interest rates are so high, and all that is information you can't get. So
unpack that regulatory framework and where we can
enshrined in the Universal Declaration of People's Rights, the ICCPR, as well carrying out its function. Article 20 of the Constitution, going on the legal framework of Kenya, Article 20 continues to be another opportunity where these rights can be used for international members of the executive, but based on the right to information that is enshrined in the Ugandan law. The holding, unfortunately,